Thank you for tuning in to the You Own the Experience podcast, episode 7, where we sit down with Mr. Brian Cunningham, the principal of Allen Recruitment out of Dublin, Ireland. Brian is a technology evangelist in the staffing and recruiting space, and today we're going to learn how he turned his company, Allen Rec, into an inbound machine. They no longer make cold calls, so don't worry about making 70, 100 cold calls a day, recruiters. His team actually just has 7 to 10 warm meetings booked every day on their calendar. Brian's going to walk us through his tech stack and how he enabled that. Please make sure you listen to the entire episode, as there's gems everywhere. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. And thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. All right, guys, we got Mr. Brian Cunningham, the principal at Allen Recruitment, with us today. How's it going, Brian?
Super, Rob. How are you doing?
I am doing as well as expected. Just so you guys know, we're recording this on April 9th. We're in the middle of a COVID lockdown. We're going to focus on that, obviously, for a couple minutes because we'd be remiss if we didn't. But we do want to focus on the core of the podcast, the people experience. So we'll get there. Brian, maybe jump in, do a 2-minute elevator pitch of Allen Rec yourself, and maybe give us some information about how COVID's affecting Allen Rec at this point.
We're a recruitment agency, concentrate on permanent, contract, and temporary positions. We work primarily with technology companies and finance companies. We've been very, very fussy about the companies that we've engaged with. So we have a very blue chip client base. And just to kind of link it into COVID, that has been the savior of us. All of our clients have been amazing. Google, Facebook, Microsoft, UBS Bank, State Street, they've all kept everyone on. They have them working remotely. They're continuing to hire people. They're onboarding remotely. So it's just been fantastic. We've been so lucky. Now, myself and Louise Allen had been through 2 different recessions, 9/11, which was maybe, well, we don't know what this one's going to be like, but it was short and sharp and it took 6 months and then it bounced back. This could be very similar if it ever gets to an end, or maybe, if it comes back next winter, God knows where we'll be. But we diversified our business into having, not just permanent recruitment, and that's where the temporary stuff came along. And thankfully we have recurring income. We've enough to pay the bills every month. So it's quite okay from our point of view. I think personally, we've worked remotely. All our systems are in the cloud, Bullhorn, Herefish, Cloud Call, all of those applications. And our guys have always had the option to work from home. So it wasn't a big deal. I think a few people are going a bit stir crazy insofar as this is probably the longest time they've worked from home continuously. So that's quite tough. We had a kind of a team meeting today. We do one every Thursday, and it's just, we share stuff. It's just to keep the connection with people who are in different countries and different places. And, normally we talk about Friday and we're going out drinking and partying and having a great time. We were talking about baking today, so cooking and baking seems to become very popular with our guys. So from that point of view, it's quite good. What do we do? Why are we different? We believe we think differently about recruitment. We don't think of it as a 360 individual sport. It's very much a process. It's very much team-based. And hence the kind of automation and different systems that we use are all about, I think you used the words, enhancing our employees' experience of recruitment, because we don't see it like a lot of people do. It's all about quality. It's not always quantity, and it's all about filling roles. So from that perspective, we see ourselves as, what the future of recruitment is going to look like. And we're doing a lot of that already. I was at the Bullhorn Engage thing in London. I was presenting at it in September. Seems like a year, millions of years ago now at this stage. But Art Papa stood up and he talked about the future of recruitment. And I was sitting next to our sales director and I went, hey, I said, that's what we're doing. We're doing this, right? So we feel we're a little ahead of the game. The thing I think is exciting is that I think agency recruitment could have an edge. With all of this technology that's being developed, it's very much focused on recruitment agencies. And if you think about in-house recruitment over the last 15, 20 years, probably, don't know how long, it's really got more of a foothold and is much more popular with companies. But, their software they're using is not as connected up. It's not as automated. It doesn't have the stuff that agency recruitment software does now. So maybe this is an extra advantage for us. Maybe we can go further and find those candidates that they can't and do what we're supposed to do. And, our job, the way we describe it, is we find better candidates quicker than our competitors. I know the guys listening to this probably disagree, and that's fine, right? But definitely than the in-house guys. They'll all agree with that. So that's what we're about.
That's awesome. And there's a lot of things we're going to unpack there, guys. First and foremost, my wife is baking bread. She's always been a really good cook, but one of our friends made sourdough starter, which is a thing apparently, and we have to feed it. And now we're making sourdough bread for ourselves, and pretty awesome. So everyone's baking, Brian, whether it's UK, US, Ireland.
I'll be starting home brewing soon. We're going to run out of beer soon.
Oh, that is a massive problem for the Irish. I could tell you that. I've been drinking meads. I'm from New Jersey. I live in Miami. There's a meadery in Union, New Jersey called Mellow Vino, and I bought 9 bottles for my birthday. So still trying to support local businesses as much as possible. But yeah, I mean, future state of business, future state of staffing and recruiting. I would love to unpack what you're doing people-wise, like we talked about pre-show, and then you give a hint of what Art was talking about and what you guys are doing technology-wise there. And I agree with you 100%. Like the Workdays and the Worlds don't really have the power to do all the things that through APIs Bullhorn can do, or some of the other ones in the industry, like, Job Adder is becoming a player. So APIs are important to being able to connect and extend. And I think Brian does a really good job of that. So let's go with people, Brian. What did you do? What did you change? What's the future of recruitment like for your people?
It started off as efficiencies. It wasn't automation, probably didn't exist. And sometimes you look back and say, why didn't we do this then? Well, we didn't have all the bits. So this is like a jigsaw. It's constantly evolving. There's new shapes and new pieces coming all the time, and you put them together and the picture starts forming, and then it doesn't, and you keep moving it around. So one of the big things that's happened to us in the last probably year is we started using Herefish. Originally, we took it on as a candidate marketing product. We then went through a stage of using it for business development, and a bit like, the HubSpots and Marketos of the world, but we're using Herefish to do that. And Jason, we used to drive him mad going, why can't you do this for contacts, not just also candidates? And what do you mean? So suddenly now he's standing up selling that it does sales for you. So I like to think I was involved in that a little bit.
You were.
We were, okay. So one of the big things from our perspective was, we had a process. Now, we called it a framework because recruitment isn't a black and white. It's not a manufacturing process. Every candidate's different, every call's different, every job's different. So what we did was we gave people different kind of gates that they had to go through, but they could decide how they got to the next gate. So think of a slalom skier. You can go this way or this way. That was how we saw recruitment. Now, one of the big things was when you called someone, so we'd identify a list of candidates who were suitable. You'd call that person. And if you didn't get them, we'd send them a text and we would send them an email following up. And we were looking at saying, firstly, we were forgetting to do it. Call would ring. But the majority of calls, we were leaving voicemails. You talked to guys that picked up the phone 60 or 70 times that day, and they talked to nobody. And they were fit to hit the bottle. They were like you. They were buying beer on the way home and drinking it because this was a horrible job. You can only so many times saying, hi, it's Brian from Mann Recruitment, before you've had enough. So one of the things we did was we started using Herefish to send those follow-ups. And then we actually thought about it and said, why don't we send them first, right? So we went, hang on. So what we did was we'd identify a shortlist when we set up a job, because with the best will in the world as a recruiter, I get an offer or something happens, that's my day gone. I'm suddenly focused on that. And the people I'm trying to contact have just disappeared off my radar. So what we said is, no. As soon as you get the list, stick in all of these people and add them into Herefish, and that's what we called it. So literally we built a process for each recruiter. They added a note in Bullhorn saying, Herefish this guy, please. And what would happen at that point is a text and an email would go out to the guy every day for the next 4 or 5 days. We didn't bombard them totally. So the first one was a text, and the first conversation was, are you looking for a new job? Yes or no? And it was literally like that. And people would come back and say no. If you had 100 people you were targeting, we just got rid of 50% of them. That was 50 voicemails, right, that we were leaving, that had just disappeared. Then the second thing we came along and we did was the second message. So you get a follow-up email, so a text one part of the day, an email, just in case they didn't see it or forgot about it. Then the next day was, are you interested in this job? So if it was a Java developer or marketing manager, are you interested in a marketing manager job? And some of them would come back and say, no, I'm a marketing director. Now, the data we'd worked off was basically that he was a marketing manager. Guess what? We now know he's a marketing director. But guess what? He didn't say he wasn't looking, right? So write that down. So we'd update the general candidate comments in Bullhorn. That information was there. So next time we came across him, he's looking for a director role. Hang on, that's what I have. We just found a guy, right? So keeping the information, keeping it going all the time is really important. The third one, which is kind of unusual in recruitment, we told him who the client was. Would you like to work for Google? Would you like to work for Facebook? Or whatever the name of the company is. And guess what? People come back and say, actually, I'd love to work for Google, but I don't want that job. This is what I'm interested in. So guess what? Now we've a guy who wants to work for Google that we can talk to. So all along, we're collecting people who may be looking for a job. Again, think back to what we used to do. So you and I are on this call at the moment. So if a recruiter rings you now, you probably got your phone turned off, or at least I hope you have, and he says, hey, Rob, fabulous new job, I want to talk to you, blah, blah. And you say, oh, that's great, cool, right? So this call is over. You listen to your voicemail, you ring the guy back. He's a recruiter. Well, where is he? He's on the phone leaving the next voicemail, right? So straight away, you're leaving a voicemail for him. It's back and forth and back and forth. And then you both give up. And that fabulous opportunity is just missed. So what we now do is when we get the job in, we add the 100, we add them into Hairfish. So over a week, they start to get these texts and emails. So people will come back to you. But the bit that kind of made all of that, pulled it all together and changed how we do things was we use Calendly. So it was actually, I think Jason was using it, or the guys in Hairfish, you were using it. And I went, what's this thing? What's this? So what we then did was we got Calendly and we stuck it in to each of the texts and each of the emails and says, book a time when suits you to talk to me. Okay. So think back to a year ago or 2 years ago, or what a lot of other people are doing. You're making 50 calls a day, 60 calls a day, getting to talk to 2 or 3 people. The ones you do get to talk to, they don't want to talk to you. Now, today, my guys walk in, well, tomorrow's Good Friday, so we're not working tomorrow, but come Tuesday, their diary is full of people who want to talk to them and who are available to talk to them at that time. So the texts and emails are prompted. The guy picks his time. So 3:30 on Tuesday, we have a call with this guy, because guess what? He's going to nip out and get a coffee. Now, he's working from home because of COVID, so we can talk to them all anyway, so that's great, right? But the reality is that he can actually pick when suits him. He gets the reminders, it does all of that. My guys walk in, there's no stress. The brilliant thing is they now can work from home when they want. They can work the hours they want. So literally they make their diary available. It starts at 10 and it finishes at 7, right? Or it starts at 7 and finishes at 3. So depending on what's going on in their lives, they can work in around it. Like, what other recruiter can do that? You have to be there till 5:30 or 6 because you never know, someone might ring you back and I have to do this. And so that's all disappeared for us. So it's really changed the atmosphere in our office. Everyone's much happier. It's easier. Now we feed them in, right? And the ones who are interested come back. The ones who are not interested sometimes come back, but they run through the process. And if they get to the end and they haven't come back, we change their status to could not contact. So automatically, Hairfish does that for us. So we don't need to update the record. It just runs through. Now, we have another program we do that. If we haven't got enough good candidates from that, we ring what we call the fence sitters. So Hairfish has a score. So every time you open an email or a text, it ups the score or downs the score depending on what you're doing. So if we have a list of 100 people, 25% have come back to me, but 75% haven't. Who am I going to call first? Well, the guy who unsubscribed, I'm definitely not calling him, right? The guy who hasn't responded or opened anything, maybe he's not interested. Maybe that's the wrong email or number. I don't know, but we're not calling him. But the guy who's opened everything, we call him the fence sitter, right? So why hasn't he replied? He's probably going, oh, I don't know if I get that job. Oh, I'm not sure. Like, he's never getting a job from normal recruiters. But the fact that we now pick up the phone and says, look, Jack, I can see you open that email 3 times every day for the last week. Why didn't you send me an email? Right? So this just changes the game from our point of view. So from those 100 candidates, the guys who are not interested, we get rid of straight away. The guys who are interested but not in this job, they tell us what they're looking for. We now have them for the next time we go through. And the last one is the poor guy who's sitting on the fence and he doesn't know what to do. We get him as well. So we're reaching candidates that through normal recruitment processes, they would never have got reached. The amount of times people come back and say, oh, thank you for being so, kind of focused and, diligent and chasing me. I really wanted to talk to you, but I just was busy or this was going on. And guess what? If they don't want to talk to you, there's an unsubscribe, there's an opt-out at every time. We get very few of those because they're written really nicely. So that's been the people bit. And that's changed how our team operate. It's changed their success factors. It's made this job an awful lot easier.
So when I worked at Hairfish, I would literally sell Brian's process to people. If you're not familiar with HubSpot or inbound sales strategy, that's exactly what he's describing. It's not HubSpot works for sales, like selling software like Employee Stream or Hairfish, et cetera.
That's where we got Hairfish from, because we were looking to buy HubSpot and couldn't afford it. Okay, and it's not that Hairfish is cheap, right?
No.
HubSpot wanted to take our 100,000 candidates and load them up, and it was so much money for each candidate. And I remember going to presentations and sales things from them. I said, does this work for anything apart from selling swimming pools? right? Because that was the examples they always used, right? So my issue was, I said, look, there's not that many swimming pools in Ireland, and they'd no recruitment examples. So that's where I met Jason and the guys and you guys in Hairfish at that point.
Makes total sense. And I mean, that's why I loved Hairfish, because I understood and did a lot of the HubSpot Training Academy classes. So really cool to hear that. Guys, that was a lot of secret sauce if you weren't paying attention. So go back and listen. That was about 7-8 minutes of pure hard work and thought process. So essentially, these guys went from making cold calls to, instead of emailing and texting them, immediately removing 50%, right? Like kind of recapping this, but then gathering relevant data on candidates who were interested, but then also using their behavioral activity on the emails and text to reach out if they didn't have enough responses, or if they just had some free time and they wanted to engage with people who were engaging with their brand, but weren't jumping in. And I remember you telling me that you tell people the company, because that's just adding value. And it's like, hey, I don't want to work for Google, but I would love to work for Microsoft or whatever it is. Opportunity for the candidate to give you a piece of data that you can later use to figure out what to do with them, right? Or how to help them. So I love all of that.
It builds trust as well.
Yeah.
Recruitment agents were probably not the highest level in that trust circle that you see, So because of that, I always think of, we're like estate agents, we're down at that level with them.
Yeah.
So, the fact that you give them something, look, my view always was that, we have to tell the candidate at some point who the client is. And guess what? Well, I'm not sure. I'll have to think about it. And if they're going to apply anyway, they're going to do it. Right. So we just are kind of more upfront about it. And it's always worked well for us. And it just saves yourselves a load of time later on.
Why not be transparent? I think, the companies gave you the order, unless they're asking you for you to be confidential, then, and usually those are C-level roles, not the
exactly
mid-level roles. So makes perfect sense. And do you mind sharing, how did that affect your revenue? You don't have to tell me the numbers, but if there was like a percentage, like the end of the story, kind of like what that created in revenue for you?
Last year, with less staff, we grew by 30% in turnover.
Got it.
So that was pretty good. So we've become more efficient. Now, this is not an overnight. Like I remember someone asked me a question once and said, you started out 4 years ago going in the efficiency route to where we are today. Would I do it again? Probably not. Okay, because no. I remember I described this to someone as Cork is on the west coast of Ireland, right? And we're a little company in a little rowboat and we're in the harbour. And our goal at the beginning of this project was we were going to row all the way to New York. Okay. Now there's a big bad sea out there, a big ocean out in front of us, right? And when we arrive in New York, we were going to be on an ocean liner. Okay. That was the plan. That's where we started off. So just as soon as we got to the mouth of the harbour, this wave hit us, and that was called 9/11. And we were literally against the rocks back in there. The boat was in bits, right? We couldn't just stop our business and rebuild it and then turn up in 2 years' time. We didn't have the money to do that. So it was like 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards. Also, the technology wasn't all there at the time. We had Hairfish at the beginning, we had Bullhorn at the beginning, and then, where was everything else? Like Cloud Call came along, the ability to send texts from a process. We literally only got texts in the last 6 months or so, even less, before we had to kind of come up with I'm going to say a bastardized solution to do it. But we did. We came up with a way of doing it. But the reality was that this was a tough path. And I remember reading about a company in the States who went down this road, and they were lucky enough that they were big enough and financially strong enough that what they set up was another recruitment agency right next to their existing 360, old school recruitment agency. And they hired in high-end graduates, people who knew little or nothing about recruitment, let them try to figure out, and they put them in competition on the same roles. Right. Now, I didn't find out which way it ended up, right? But they were able to do that. Now, we weren't. So one of our biggest problems was people. There was people who didn't buy into this. And they'd go, yeah. And then they go back to the old way. And even I remember at Engage, people asking me, I have Bullhorn and all these products, but people aren't using them. And I said, did you ever ask them why they don't use them? He said, my guys are still using spreadsheets. And I said, why? You have to figure it out. So again, the bit we've done with Hairfish and using it to automate is, my guys now have time. They have time to talk to a candidate. They have time to follow up. They have time to do some stuff socially. They just have time. Whereas recruiters are like headless chickens running around. Here, where am I gone? And you don't control your day. The phone rings in the morning, and guess what? The day's over, right? That's just your plan out the window. But by doing it the way we're doing it, it's just changed the quality in that environment. So to me, it's a huge game changer. Would I do it? Yes, I probably would. I'd do it differently now. I think what we did in 4 years, people could do in a year. But data quality. Now, again, Louise Allen will choke on her coffee if she's listening to this. Data quality is one of the most important parts of this. A girl, Amy, you might have dealt with actually, who used to work for us. She moved to Australia, as a lot of Irish people do of a certain age.
I was in a sales cycle with her last year. That's so funny. For the Australian company she was working with.
Yeah. So I was just talking to her recently. I was saying, how are you getting on? Did you implement Herefish? And they didn't do it, right? And it wasn't anything to do with the product. It was the data, right? They couldn't actually do it because it relies on the data to send the message. The old saying, crap in, crap out. If you've crap data and it says the guy is a rocket scientist and you send him a job about a road sweeper, guess what? He's not going to be interested.
Or
again,
happy.
You guys are always going, how are you getting such engagement, right? Because we spend so much time making sure everyone who comes into our database, they're set up properly. We know what they do and what they're interested in. Okay, we might know exactly how senior you are, but when I send you information about Java jobs, I know you're a Java developer. You're not a QA guy. You're not a project manager. So we know that. But that was one of the key things. So the big push now for us is we're using Herefish to really push data quality. So do you remember those gates I mentioned, the slalom skier? So say you do a screen with a candidate. So what happens is an hour later, Herefish now checks 10 key pieces of information on that record. And if any of them are left as the default or any of them are blank, you get an email saying data quality team, blah, 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 you need to update this, and this, please, right? So then you go onto a tear sheet automatically, and we have a data quality person who once a week checks in and says, you didn't update that record. So we're trying to build good habits by prompting, because do it for them, but they have to want to do it. So even, we were doing some training on searching this week, and the guys doing it were like, oh, that's why you want us to update that record. Now I understand, So for me, data quality is a big, big, big part of this. I mightn't go to the nth degree that Louise would, but if she wasn't doing what she did, we wouldn't be able to do it. So as Amy said, they couldn't implement it. So get the data quality right. Perhaps in a year, you could get to the point we're at. It is possible, but there's a certain amount of pain that you have to go through.
So a couple of things there. Number one, adoption has to come from the frontline users. And I was talking to Lauren Jones, a consultant, right? And she was saying, make sure that you have the frontline adoption because the other people who are going to use the tools that you're buying, but then you have to tell them why. And you kind of have to wrap it up in a marketing kind of ploy. So if you do this, your life gets better. You might have had 50% buy-in at one point, Brian, right? But then once it started working for that 50%, you had 100% probably very quickly.
We did, and people saw the benefit, So one of the other things we did was we put Insight Squared in on top of everything. And Insight Squared, for people who don't know it, every note, every status you change within Bullhorn, it basically can track what's happening, okay? And then it gives you a set of metrics, so data. Different people have implemented in different ways. Now, we gave it to everybody. We don't use it as a stick to beat people with. We use it as a way of people learning. So you mentioned some people were more successful. What my guys now do is they jump into Insight Squared and go, what's he doing? Right? Why is he successful? Right? So what's his ratios? So we always think of the numbers are really important. The number tells you the volume and the quantity, but the ratio tells you the quality. So if your ratio of screens to send out is twice someone else's, well, you're either not screening them properly or the people you're trying to screen are the wrong people. Your send out to interview ratio, what is it? Ours is 1.7 at the moment, right? Okay. So if you think about that, 1 in 2 we send out gets an interview, which is stunning. That's something we've worked really hard at. Those ratios are really important. So we sometimes look and say, why is the ratio changed? And maybe the message needs to change. So we change the wording of the texts. Maybe it's the type of role someone's working on. So again, we're always kind of playing and trying to make it better and better and better. If we can get 1% better every day or every week, that's what we're trying to do all the time.
Got it. I love it. Guys, Insight Squared is a business analytics tool or business intelligence tool that sits on top of Bullhorn and does reporting. So in case you're not familiar. And think about that BI tool compared to data quality, right? It's all data. It's all around having good data, being able to use that data. And coming at it from a marketing perspective, really, and this is something that I talk about a lot kind of in passing, is your marketing officers are now your CIOs, right?
Yeah.
Or your CTOs. The marketing people really are kind of driving that data because they know how it comes inbound into the system. And so if you're not paying attention to that, or if you're not telling people that, hey, you should be entering data correctly because the end result is automation, or the end result is that you're going to make more money because of the automation. I think that's really how you drive, going back to the adoption piece, how you drive adoption. So there's just so much there. There's so much to unpack and talk about. Okay, you've mentioned a lot of technology, Brian. Something that Brian does really well, by the way, is he sells his tech stack. So I don't need you to go into the full pitch because I've sat through that.
Enough time.
I've sat through that. We have about 10 minutes left. We're going to cover. It's amazing. I love talking about selling your tech stack, and I think it's really important, especially in the COVID world, right? You have to differentiate yourself, and talking a lot about doubling down on technology and really using that investment at this period when you're lean and you can work on your business. So maybe explain, I know it's part of that whole process, this whole journey you've been talking about for that 4-year journey that you went on, but explain maybe how you sell your tech stack and why, and maybe go through at the end a list of your, if you want to go through your whole list of what you use, if you don't mind sharing. But go ahead.
No.
I'll let you run.
Okay. Well, probably the easiest thing to do is I'll kind of run through very quickly, say from a candidate coming in to our database. We advertise using job aggregation boards, so the likes of Broadbean, and we post our job out. Someone hits apply. Now, there's numerous different tools that you can use to load the data into Bullhorn. So they have their own one, and then we use Daxter Capture. The reason we use Daxter Capture, it works really well in this part of the world with addresses and names, and we're constantly working with them to get it better and better. So we had an issue recently where the country wasn't, if someone didn't specify what country they're in their CV, it wasn't being populated. So then when we're doing hair efficient searches, we couldn't see, just had no country in it. So we've got them now to analyze the phone numbers. So if the international code is on it, we can now stick in what country they're in or more than likely in. So things like that. So we work with them to do that. So that helps. So everything, we try to get everything coming through that same funnel. So think of another gate, right? So everyone goes through Daxter Capture. It means the consistency of the quality of the data is quite good. At that point, then Bullhorn is our database. And that's the majority of what we'd use from setting up jobs, candidates, records. That's the repository where everything is. And one of the differentiators, like we were driven to Bullhorn, just as a little aside, we used to use another Bond Adapt, which Bullhorn own now, I think, right? And they were the SAP of the recruitment world. It was the biggest, most expensive one. It did what it said in the tin. You know, it was a really good product, but it was client server and everything else. So after, I think it was 9/11, because I don't know how long we've been with Bullhorn now, but we actually couldn't afford. We needed to upgrade the 4 servers that we needed to run Bond Adapt, right? And, you know, they were each, I can't remember what it was, but I needed 20,000 to do this and I didn't have it, right? And I'm going, what am I going to do? And that's what drove me to the cloud. And we were one of the first Bullhorn people. Pete Linus actually sold it to us. It was just him at this point over this part of the world. So dealing with Pete at that point, and literally it was a case of we got going with it. So that kind of got us into the cloud. And then I always had this thing of, I just wanted one login. I wanted everything in the one place. So I have one rule when I look at other products. If it's not integrated with Bullhorn, it doesn't work. Just point blank. It doesn't matter how good it is. I'm not going to consider it, because if the guys have to have 2 or 3 logins and log into different things, some will use one, some will others. Oh, it's over, data's over here. So we have one rule. If it's not in Bullhorn, it didn't happen. Right? So if you don't record it in Bullhorn, don't come and tell me, right? Oh no, I did this, or I was doing that on LinkedIn, or I was doing that here. It has to be in Bullhorn. Then kind of pushing through, we use Daxter Search. Again, one of the things that Daxter Search does for us, it can search all of the databases and it brings them all back into one place. So you think about, if you have 5 databases, that's 5 individual searches. So what do people do? They go to the one they like the most and they search and go into Monster. And then when they're finished, they're jaded. So they never search your database. So they don't search Bullhorn or LinkedIn or whatever else it is. Today it's probably LinkedIn that they all go to. But to us, because you use Daxter Search, it makes you search Bullhorn. Right? We have it set up so that it automatically searches Bullhorn. So it brings back the results and says, see the best guy for this job? He's actually in Bullhorn. Okay, so suddenly it makes our recruiters use the different databases. So that's really, really important. Calling wise, we use Cloud Call. Again, it's fully integrated with it. We use Kylo, who do a lot of stuff for us. They're kind of like, I describe them as the glue, because sometimes while these products are integrated, they mightn't actually do it exactly the way you want. So we use Kylo for a lot of that changes and different stuff. They're like the professional service partners for Bullhorn. So when you can't get Bullhorn to do it, you get Kylo to do it. To make some of this stuff we do work, like there's a little thing, you know, if someone changes a status for someone on a shortlist in Bullhorn, it doesn't add a note, okay, into the record. If you don't have a note, then Hairfish can't pick up on it. then Inside Square doesn't know what happened. So we had to get them to do that first. So they wrote a little piece that does that. So they're quite important. We also use them for formatting documents and sending out CVs and all of that sort of thing. With timesheets, it's RSM, Herefish for all our automation and marketing type stuff. Text us for our texting, which are integrated. We used to use IceTrack for that. We use SourceBreaker as another searching tool. But one of the big things we use SourceBreaker for is building our Boolean searches. So we search a little bit different. One of the things we look for is consistency. So we write a Boolean string when a job is set up, and then we use that consistently then wherever we search. And we try to search on the data rather than through the interface. So if you go into LinkedIn, can you remember the search you did yesterday on LinkedIn, and can you do it the same way? No. You turn this switch or turn that knob, and you're like, well, where did these candidates come from? These are not what I'm looking for. Whereas we can. We pull the Boolean out, we run it directly on LinkedIn, and out comes the answers, and we're able to pick the candidates from there. Have I missed anything? There was lots of stuff there.
That was amazing. I think people need to hear that sometimes, especially right now where digital transformation. I saw a joke on LinkedIn. It was like, who drove the digital transformation of your company? And it was like A, the CEO, B, the CIO, and then C, COVID-19. And COVID-19 was the answer, right? So people are going through digital transformation, whether they like it or not.
Rob, this could be the new norm. Like, you work from home, okay? So you're used to it. But most recruitment agencies don't. And, I had someone I helped recently, another Irish agency who's moved to Bullhorn and pretty much copied our tech stack. They rang me up and thanked me when this happened because everyone could just go home and work.
Was it a panel?
It was.
Yeah, I love those guys. They're so great. Okay, good. I'm happy.
Yeah, that was them. So they were happy out. They were able to keep working, and, it was important for them. But, you think of what's going to change out of this. Suddenly doing Zoom, like you were talking earlier about your parents and my parents and how they're surviving out of all of this with the technology. But suddenly, I was telling you, we're going to have a party next Friday for all the staff online. We're going to hire a musician to do some music and stuff, but that'll become the new norm. Whereas normally we have a party in Dublin and the guys in London or in Amsterdam, they aren't here for it. So they miss out on it. Whereas we'll just do online parties in future, and that's going to be the new norm. So out of this pandemic, there'll be a major shift in how business works. I heard a story recently, a client of ours, the cost of a desk in their office is 15,000 euros a year, right? So by the time they put all the services and everything around that desk, it's 15,000. People are paying for their own internet at home now, right? Yeah. So it's like, what? We don't need that. So you could see a big shift. Now, not everyone will do it. I'm not a great person for working from home, so I struggle. So from that perspective, you have to kind of horses for courses. But I can see, people working closer to home, maybe having a serviced office. We have a couple of people who do that. We have a lady down the country here. She struggled working from home. So she now goes into, not a WeWork, it's like a WeWork. And she goes in, she's got some people around she can talk to. She feels like she's in an office. She does it 2 or 3 days a week. Makes her feel better, But she's not driving for an hour in and out of Dublin trying to come into us. This is 5 minutes from our house,
Well, I was actually saying, so WeWork was actually going to get bought out or they're going to have a $3 billion bailout by SoftBank, and they canceled the bailout. But I was thinking about this, and it's like, exactly what you said. There's going to be people who don't need to go to the office, but they're going to want to get out of the office. So I feel like the Industrious HQ, which is another version of it, and there's a couple other ones that are doing those things, are going to thrive. I actually said this in a podcast that I'm going to be the guest in. I think it's going to get released tomorrow or Monday. But they should have bailed them out, because I feel like this is going to change the way that we work and how we work. And commercial real estate is going to get cheaper, because guess what? Brian Cunningham isn't going to buy an office that's 10,000 square feet or whatever
100%.
Because they don't need it, right? So,
but even you think about the other thing, global, right? We've had a client who was looking to hire people in Bulgaria, and the candidates we found, they'd exhausted the local marketplace. So again, think about what we do. We identified every DevOps engineer within all the local countries who might be interested in moving to Sofia, right? And we turned on Hairfish. And guess what? Not interested. Yes, I'll work in Bulgaria. No, I won't. And we found the guys who would. So we had 4 guys who were due to start. And because of this, they can't move from there. One guy's in Greece, and I think another guy's in Poland. I can't remember. But they can't get into Sofia to move there. They're going to start next week online. DHL are turning up with a laptop, off they go. Why would those guys move? Like, if they can do the job now, why would they? But to companies, this now gives you access to that resource who's living somewhere else, who is the best resource. I've always, like, in-house recruitment to me They'll give you to whoever applies. A lot of agencies, that's all they do. But our job is to find you the best person for this job of all the people who are looking for a job at the moment. That's our job. If we can do that, we get you the best person you can. You'll love us forever. But the reality is we're all too busy. Whereas now, if you use the tools and give yourself more time, you can build that relationship with a candidate. You can find the people. Not only do they have to be able to do the job, they have to want the job. And that's, if you have time, you can find that out. If you keep dealing with your candidates, you can find that out. So once you clear away a lot of the stuff that's cluttering up and allow you focus on what recruiters do, we talk to people. We get their trust. We understand their motivations, what it is. If you can get that from a candidate, you can solve their problem. But I really think that whole area of global talent and accessing talent in the region than you normally would for, like Dublin, like I'm sure people have figured out, the cost is astronomical here. We're one of the most expensive cities in the world. If I could hire people and they could live 45 minutes or 45 miles outside of Dublin, the cost of their accommodation would be half. We have a guy, Jamie, who works for us. On the west coast of Ireland, up near Donegal, there's an island called Arranmore. And I remember seeing the TV ad. 3, who's one of the telecoms guys here, have just connected this island to their main broadband. So they've better broadband on an island off the west coast than I do in the middle of Dublin at the moment. And Jamie said to me, can I go home? So based on the money he was earning living in Dublin, doing an hour's commute either way every day, he's now the richest man in Arranmore. And the reason being, he lives at home. He's no expenses. It's not a WeWork, but they've actually built an office, shared service office. He works from there. He's got these curved screens. He's got all the latest gear. He's gone off today. He took a half day today because he was going to the bog to cut turf. Now, you're going to have to look up what that is.
I know what that is.
But that couldn't happen without cloud applications, without access to internet. So that could be the future for people.
Absolutely. All right. Brian, this has been awesome. We're about the 40-minute mark. I let you run. I was pretty excited to hear it all. So how do people find you? And then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, AllenRec, ALLENREC.com. And it's just Brian at, if you want to email me. LinkedIn, you'll find me there as well. My contact details are there. I'm always happy to talk about technology. I'm always happy to help people because I always get something from it. So there's loads of people, you guys would have used me for references and stuff. And I happily do it because when I'm chatting to someone like the guys in the panel, they were telling me about what they do and how they do it. And guess what? I get something from that because we don't talk to each other. We're in our own little silos doing our own thing. And you'll always learn different ways of doing business or different problems and how people solve it. So my thing is technology. I'm passionate about it, as you can see. I'm always willing to help. So people want to chat about any bits of this, I'm happy to talk to them. On our AllenRec page on LinkedIn, there's a full picture of our technology stack. So if people are wondering about any bits of it or how it connects together, just ping me on LinkedIn or on email and I'll happily try to help.
Awesome. Brian, thank you so much. This has been great. I really appreciate you jumping on, man.
Super, Rob.
Thank you to our sponsors, EmployStream, Staffing Hub, and Great Recruiters.